They have to make a best guess as the influenza season starts to develop around the world. Because of the time required to produce influenza vaccine, they have to make a call at some point of which particular strains they're going to put in the vaccine in a given year. And in some years, the virus that ends up circulating in the world is different than the one that's in the vaccine, and in that case, the vaccine is going to be less effective, which kind of gives some bad PR, if you will, to the vaccine in the sense that people say, well, see, I told you it didn't work. You know, it's not helpful. Even when there's a good match, there's typically about a 60% effectiveness. So it is possible to still get influenza even though you got a flu shot, but a 60% reduction in what can be a serious disease is a substantial reduction and is very important then for people to get their flu shot every year, because every year there's another chance to have a good match, and in fact in most years there is a very good match between what's in the shot and what's circulating and actually causing disease. In terms of the effectiveness of the different vaccines, they're all equally now, again, the high-dose vaccine has proven to be more effective in older people, but they're all effective, and the choice of vaccine is based mostly just on the approved age range. So as long as you're giving an influenza vaccine, given all these different brands and routes, et cetera, the important thing is to not miss the opportunity to immunize somebody. So if a patient's in your office, don't assume that they're going to get their flu shot someplace else. Everybody should be asked at this time of year, had you had your flu shot? And if they have not, that they receive a vaccine. If you have several different ones available, and you can offer different choices to the patient depending on what they might prefer, but the important thing, and part of the reason that CDC is reluctant to suggest any vaccine is better compared to any other one, is that you just don't want to miss an immunization opportunity with whatever vaccine you have available, as long as it's approved for the age range of the patient who's being immunized. You cannot get the flu from a flu shot. So there are lots of people who say, well, I got the flu shot and it made me sick, and it gave me the flu, and that actually is just not possible because the virus is killed. It is possible for people, as we said, to still happen to get the flu even though they got the shot, although even in that case it's usually less severe. And then of course there's plenty of other viruses that can cause flu-like illnesses that people might have gotten during that time of year that they're blaming on the flu shot where that was not the cause. So it's important for everybody to get a flu shot every year. And on an individual basis, people think, well, you know, maybe I'll get the flu, it's not so bad. But just as a reminder, there are literally hundreds of thousands of people who are hospitalized every year because of influenza in the United States, and approximately on average 20,000 deaths from influenza. So it's a serious disease, and the vaccine is very effective in preventing it. So there clearly is this anti-vaccine movement. If you Google vaccines, you'll get just as many anti-vaccine as pro-vaccine websites, and that does seem to have quieted down some recently. So the thought, there's different variations on that. Some people think that the vaccines contain ingredients that cause harm to their children. That's been thoroughly studied, and that just absolutely is not the case. For example, there's absolutely no relationship between various vaccines and autism and other chronic conditions where there's been claimed to be an association. That just absolutely is not the case. And so I think there have also been recurrences of diseases. So there was a measles outbreak, and measles again can be a serious and even fatal disease or have long-term consequences afterwards. And so I think people are starting to get the idea that there's a risk to not being vaccinated. So whenever people think there may be some risk associated with vaccination, they need to compare that risk with the risk of not being vaccinated, which is real and substantial. The risk being that you would get the disease, because the diseases are still out there, as we've seen with these measles outbreaks. So I think some of that has in fact led to some some backing off on the anti-vaccine movement. That's where it started, and in fact has led to a change in the laws in California now, where it used to be very easy to get an exemption. So parents basically just had to say they had a philosophical objection to vaccination and sign a paper, and their children didn't have to be vaccinated to go to school. And then there was kind of a change to that where they actually had to talk to a physician, which does help. So the fact that the parents could still opt out, but they had to actually have a conversation with a physician before they opted out, where the physician would have an opportunity to explain the various risks of being vaccinated, again, versus being unvaccinated. And now there's a new law after this measles outbreak where those sort of philosophical and religious exemptions are no longer allowed, and that's true in many states. It's state by state. There are very rare but specific medical reasons why somebody should not receive a vaccine. So for example, children with immune deficiency or who are immune suppressed because they're being treated for cancer, etc., those children cannot receive certain live viral vaccines, which then makes it even more important for all the children, the vast majority who can receive the vaccines, to do so to prevent the spread of disease, so that these children, the rare children who cannot be vaccinated, will not then get the disease from some child who went unvaccinated.